Okay, today we're moving on to lesson 6.3, and our goal is to add and subtract positive and negative numbers. So I'm just going to write that down so we can remember that as we go. Positive and negative numbers. So right now we're going to start on Math Journal page 211. So you can turn to that. At the top, the math message, I'm just going to read that and you can follow along. It says, read this section, negative numbers, on page 271 in your student reference book. Study the key sequence for the calculator you are using. We're not going to really read that right now since we're doing a lesson on it, but you do need your calculator out. And if you look at number 1, it's telling you enter each number in your calculator, record the calculator display. So that's what I'm going to do right now, and you're going to do that with me. Looking at problem number 1, there are several numbers here. So the first one, it wants us to enter -4 85/100. So what we need to do, and this one is a pretty simple one, we need to find our negative on the calculator, which is down here, -4, then our decimal, 85/100, and this is what our calculator looks like. If I would press equal, it looks the same. So that's the answer that you write on your line. You're just going to write -4 85/100. Pretty obvious right now what it will look like. Number 2, we are supposed to type in negative and then in parentheses 2/3. So we need to type it exactly like that. So we start with our negative, that's outside the parentheses, then it does want us to put a parenthesis. To do 2/3, you type 2, numerator, 3, denominator, and then put my parenthesis, so it will look exactly like this on your display as well. And if I press enter, now it looks the same, but I don't have parentheses there, so that's what I'll be writing on my line. I'll be just writing -2/3. And you see how to do that, so make sure that you enter. You're going to do 3 and 4 as well, but you need to finish those on your own. So I'll just write finish here as a note so that you know to do that. And now moving on, we have something a little bit different. So if you look down and looking before number 2, it says you can use the negative sign or OPP to represent the phrase the opposite of. For example, the opposite of 12 is written as, and we'll write it here so we can see it. This is how they have it written in your math journal. They said the opposite of 12 can be written 2 ways, as -12 or, and then they wrote it like this, opposite with 12 in parentheses. Now this isn't something that we're really going to be digging a lot into, but for today's lesson, we're talking a lot about negatives and that the opposite of a positive would be a negative, so we are talking about that today. If we look at number 2, it says to enter the first number into your calculator, record the calculator display, clear the calculator before entering the next number. So if you look at our calculator, we don't really have a button that just says OPP. If you look at here, it says OP1, OP2, but we actually don't have that, so you can go ahead and for number 2, just cross that out. I'm not worried about you using your calculator for that, so we're going to move on from that. But now if we look, I'm just going to move over on our page here. Now if we look, how about I fold it in half? Down at numbers 3 through 10, they're having you use your calculator today. So we're just going to look at one of these together because with your calculator you should be able to do this just fine. So -26 minus 17, they want you to write your answer. Beneath that they have -26 plus the opposite of 17. So really what you're doing is -26 plus -17. Hopefully you guys are already thinking, well, Mrs. Allen, actually I'm just going to get the same answer. And you're absolutely right, you would get the same answer, -43. So that's a pattern that you'll be noticing as you go through the whole rest of your 3 through 10, that you will be finding the same answer. And because we don't have this button on your calculator, you don't necessarily need to type it in. I'll show you if you want to check it what you would do. So it wants us to do -26 plus the opposite of 17. So I'm going to put a parenthesis and write negative 17 like that. So this problem is showing exactly what this one is still showing us. And again, you will get the same answer, negative 43, just so you can see how that works. Okay, moving on, we actually are not going to do page 212. So you can cross that out now if you want. And looking at your math box, you're going to be doing that. I'll write down your assignment here. But really today, it's just making sure you're using your calculator to do this. So we aren't doing a lot of this on our own, which means we're not going to go too much more in depth right now because you'll be using a calculator. If you do have questions, make sure you ask. But here's your assignment. I'm just going to let you get started. So you're going to finish Math Journal, page 211. Math Journal, page 211. We are not doing 212. 213 is your math box, and then you do have a study link. Your study link is 6.3, and on that study link you're not going to do numbers 4 through 7, so you can cross those out right away. And then for IXL, I will write that up on the board for you so that you can see what we have today.